pull request. There is very little activity before and after, and they will later push for this compromised version of XC to be included in Debian. And in July, APR was open in Hot Fuzz to disable iPhone for buzzing builds. So it really appears, all right, when you're reading out through this entire situation, that the people who were behind this were actually very coordinated, and they put a lot of time and they put a lot of foresight into trying to integrate this really scary backdoor into the software, right, based on this write-up right here. Now look, there's been a lot of assumptions being thrown around as of today, as of yesterday, as of when this dropped, that this could be something massive, like it could be something from a state actor. And for a state actor, obviously that means somebody working for the United States government, somebody working for the Chinese government, the Russian government, the Iranian government, somebody backed by the resources of an entire nation. And also that means that if they are caught, they will never end up ever being arrested because they'll just usually be behind a keyboard, put onto a different project. That's the world of actual cyber warfare these days, especially when you have state-sponsored projects. Now, look, whether this is a state-sponsored project, a long-term operation by a group of financially motivated hackers that wanted to create a net so far and wide that they could just use and exploit this in a short amount of time and make crazy money,
that is yet to be determined. However, what is something to understand and what is something to close on for this video is that open source doesn't necessarily mean completely safe. Look, the thing about open source software is it's great, especially when you can catch stuff like this and then retroactively fix it, right? Or not retroactively fix it. You can fix it and then look at all the retro history and just figure out what's gone on and what's occurring and how bad things really have gotten over the course of numerous versions. That also said, I guess the best example to provide is, let's say 100 people are using open source software. Now, open source software is software that you can open the source code to and see exactly how it's built and then, work with that. But the thing is, let's say 100 people are using an open source software, right? Let's say 100 people are using the PlayStation 3 emulator, right? They pull out the source code. That would be the expectation that 100 people are looking at all lines of that code and are able to security audit it, right? That's not obviously going to be the case. It's probably more like, let's say 95 people are just downloading the source code, building and using that software. And there's 5 people that maybe are looking through that code. And not all of them are completely equipped to understand obfuscation and understand the security that goes with figuring out how code is compromised and how to fix that code. So obviously open source relies on, again, the few people that are actually maintaining that code. There are tons of software, tons of cases where backdoors can be sort of fuddled in and hidden, right? And the reality of this now is, while this situation seems to be at least somewhat mitigated, it's kind of us wondering how far back does Giatan and how far back does this situation really go? Do we reach a situation where this person maybe put some more code into this package, or maybe another package that they might have secretly worked on, and there's a backdoor existing in multiple other packages that we now have to be a little bit paranoid about. There's a million things rushing through my head, and again, through many people's head at the moment. But for the most part, the situation seems to have been caught, luckily, by a researcher at Microsoft, and now, since we're all aware of it, we can now start auditing and updating the system and basically mitigating what could have been a pretty serious attack vector. Now, I think the real situation is, who the fuck is this man Gia? And is this person just a lone actor for money, or are they part of a big government? Look, at the end of the day, XZ was a pretty wild backdoor that basically threw the community for a loop in the last 72 hours, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be something that is putting most of the people at risk. Again, if you're somebody that uses the bleeding edge stuff, like I do, at least for your home desktop stuff, then it's probably worth updating or at least downgrading to before this asshole was ever involved in a project like this. But it's always a good sign to constantly remain vigilant and make sure you understand the software you're installing. It obviously have some spooky gaps in the middle, right? And this is where, it's great that for the mainstream people, for the people jumping into this side of Linux, that they understand maybe it's worth learning how to read some code in order to understand when things look a little bit too suspicious. That said, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it.
The singer, whose latest album is called Love, is getting a lot of hate right now. This after federal authorities have raided 2 properties linked to him. one on each coast. Sean Combs appears to be part of an investigation into a sex trafficking operation. And of course, this comes as he faces multiple lawsuits that accuse him of assault and abuse, and he denies it all. We're bringing you the latest details to drop in connection with Diddy and the massive investigation. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So we have been focusing very heavily on the Sean Diddy Combs story. I mean, what's interesting about this is we actually were focusing on it, 3-4 weeks ago. I did a very big sidebar on it where I broke down all of the latest lawsuits facing the rapper, Ogle, the reported billionaire. And at the time, we were really highlighting one of the big lawsuits that he was facing. Producer named Little Rod Jones that sued him for sexual harassment, sexual assault, was alleging absolutely horrendous things against him. And this is on the heels of other lawsuits. Remember, Cassie Ventura had filed a lawsuit against him. She settled the day after, but she accused him of rape and human trafficking. I mean, the worst stuff you can imagine. And then all of a sudden you fast forward, and this week you see Diddy's name throughout the whole news. Why? Because federal agents raided properties that were connected to the rapper this past month. And it was reported that this is all in connection to an ongoing sex trafficking investigation. Now, to be clear, it has not been 100% confirmed by authorities if Combs is a target or subject of the investigation. Certain outlets are reporting that Combs is the target. What do I mean by that? Target is essentially the person that prosecutors have evidence against. They're the one they're building a criminal case against. So if he's the target of the investigation, that is a very big deal. It is being reported that the search was pursuant to a search warrant issued through the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. The probable cause that crime has been committed, evidence in connection of that, and clearly a federal judge signed off on this in order for these properties to be raided. And who are they raided by? Homeland Security carried out the raid. Homeland Security focuses on human trafficking investigations, among other things. Now, NBC News reported that several people have been interviewed by federal authorities in connection to allegations of sex trafficking, sexual assault, solicitation, distribution of illegal narcotics and firearms. This is so eerily reminiscent and consistent with the allegations from all of these high-profile lawsuits that I mentioned that were filed against Combs, his family, his businesses, his associates, sex trafficking, sexual harassment, sexual assault. It was a wild scene, though, at these properties. You saw agents swarming onto the properties, sometimes with guns drawn. We saw video of several individuals, including who appear to be Combs' sons, Justin and King, in handcuffs. Now, it seems like they were detained, not arrested. And at the time of this recording, it is not clear where Sean Combs is. There's been mixed reporting about his jet, his location. We don't really know. But what we do know is that at the time of this recording, neither he nor anyone else has been arrested or charged or indicted in connection with this operation. There are some updates, though, and those updates are what we want to talk about. So first up, there was this idea, as I mentioned, this probable cause, the search warrant signed by a judge. It's a very big deal. And we still don't know what exactly they're looking for. When you talk about sex trafficking, human trafficking, you're talking about bringing people across state lines for sexual activities or commercial profit. Commercial sex acts is another way to say it. And so what they might be looking at, you might be looking at documents, you might be looking at computers, electronic devices. One of the things that stands out to me when I think about one of these prior lawsuits, Little Rod Jones, this producer, he alleged that Sean Combs has cameras in all of his homes, and these cameras captured a lot of this illicit behavior as a form of blackmail. So was it possible they were looking at the camera systems? We just don't know. But one of the big updates that I have to talk about is this statement from Combs' attorney, Aaron Dyer. This statement reads, and it was from yesterday, it says, quote, "Yesterday, there was a gross overuse of military-level force as search warrants were executed at Mr. Combs' residences. There is no excuse for the excessive show of force and hostility exhibited by authorities or the way his children and employees were treated. Mr. Combs was never detained but spoke to and cooperated with authorities, despite media speculating their ability to travel been restricted in any way. This unprecedented ambush, paired with an advanced, coordinated media presence, leads to a premature rush to judgment of Mr. Combs and is nothing more than a witch hunt based on meritless accusations made in civil lawsuits. There has been no finding of criminal or civil liability with any of these allegations. Mr. Combs is innocent and will continue to fight every single day to clear his name. A lot of things to break down. Number one, yes, he hasn't currently been charged with anything. The civil cases, one settled, the other ones are still ongoing, so he has not been found liable. That is all true. That could change. Is it premature to call this a witch hunt? Possibly. One of the things that I've noted is that you could say it's unique that indictments, arrests have not come in conjunction with a massive raid like this. Sometimes, usually they do, but other times they don't. You need to build a case. And you hear this idea about perhaps that federal authorities have spoken with a number of individuals that might have given them probable cause to then go for the search warrant to find more information. We've interviewed Tracy Walder, former FBI CIA agent, who said that you go into these properties, this raid, one of the things you needed to do was actually retain evidence, make sure it's not destroyed. Perhaps the authorities were tipped off that evidence was about to be destroyed, not clear. But the idea of this military level force I thought was so interesting because we have to remember, again, going back to the lawsuits, again, these are lawsuits, these are allegations, different standard, we're not talking about a criminal case, but when we talk about that and we look at the allegations in these lawsuits, there has been allegations of firearms possession, that Diddy forced his associates to carry weapons for him. There was a shooting that was referenced, two shootings were referenced in that Little Rod Jones lawsuit, where Diddy engaged in this or allegedly engaged in this and then had people cover up for him. So with those thoughts in mind, and you're looking at how big these properties are, it is not surprising that you see this level of force. Authorities don't know what they're going into, and they have to detain people, bring them outside, not only for their safety, but for the safety of the people they detained as well as they're going into these properties. So the level of military force, you could argue, was justified. You mentioned that these electronics were seized. We don't know what the contents of them are. We don't know exactly what they're looking for, but that digital footprint, as we've covered in a number of cases, can be quite substantial. And ABC has reported that agents seized a number of electronic devices. Now, there's another update we want to talk about. I mentioned how there's been no arrests or indictments. Yes, in connection with the sex trafficking investigation. However, there was an arrest of a man named Brendan Paul, someone who was alleged to be Combs' drug mule, alleged that he supplied him with these illicit substances. This is, I believe, an allegation in the Little Rod Jones lawsuit. Well, he was arrested for cocaine and marijuana possession out in Florida, I believe at the airport. He has been bailed out. Just a little interesting detail about that. Now, his attorney, Brian Bieber, issued a statement to CNN. The statement says, quote, "We do not plan on trying this case in the media. All issues will be dealt with in court." Interesting. Also want to talk about the arrests here. So again, there's been no arrests, but there could have been false speculation. There could have been rumors that Diddy's sons, Justin and King, were arrested. They were handcuffed outside of the LA property during the raid. No indication they were arrested. TMZ actually reported that they came back to the home to move things out. When we first saw the images of this, I was reminded that his son, one of his sons, was implicated in wrongdoing in a lot of these illicit acts by Little Rod Jones in that lawsuit. That one of his sons was involved in a shooting at a music studio, that his son was present during a party where minor underage women were present. So when I first saw the images of them in handcuffs, you could make the mental leap that they were possibly arrested, but that is not the case. They were just detained. Now I also want to highlight something that was a little disturbing. So when this happened, this raid happened, apparently some guy shows up outside of the raid in LA, claims to be Diddy's neighbor, tells reporters that he was noticing some shady things going down with Diddy, said he saw some wild things at night. It was reported on, it was amplified, it was circulated around. Turns out that may not even be true, that he may not even be a neighbor. I have to highlight this when we're talking about a high-profile person like Diddy, okay? Rumors, speculation, misinformation is going to happen. And We have to be careful of that. We have to be mindful of that. And in a legal point of view, when you talk about Diddy and his cases, one of the things he has said in the past about all of these lawsuits is that it's a chain reaction. One person comes out, another person comes out, another person comes out. It's a money grab, making things up. That could very well be true, but it could also be that they're telling the truth. So we have to always keep a mindful eye about people's motivations, of why they're going to be coming out during this time. Let's always remember that. And talking about that, let's talk about the celebrity reaction. So there are some celebrities who have made comments about this raid, including Cassie Ventura, whose lawsuit really blew open the whole thing for the public. She accused Combs, as I said, for years of abuse, assault, rape, trafficking. The events she described in her lawsuit were horrific. And one day after she filed it, Combs settled. Those details were confidential. But Douglas Wigdor, who represents Ms. Ventura, as well as a Jane Doe that filed claims against Combs, said in a statement, quote, "We will always support law enforcement when it seeks to prosecute those that have violated the law. Hopefully this is the beginning of a process that will hold Mr. Combs responsible for his depraved conduct. Even when you settle a case, those individuals could still cooperate with law enforcement." And I got the impression that after the Ventura settlement, it was never absolving Combs of wrongdoing. So let's be clear of that. There are others who have had beef with Sean Combs in the past. He has a long-standing public feud with fellow rapper 50 Cent, who after the raid posted on Instagram, "Now it's not Diddy Do It, it's Diddy Done." It seems to be in reference to a documentary series that he's trying to put forward, the Diddy Do It. But he goes, "It's Diddy Done. They don't come like that unless they got a case." Since then, he's posted several memes mocking Diddy's legal troubles. He also said Diddy was, quote, "too freaky for society." And then we have Aubrey O'Day. She also commented on the raids. Now, Combs helped launch her music career in the early 2000s on his reality show Making the Band 3. She joined a group that became known as Danity Kane. But in later seasons of the show, O'Day was dismissed from the group, with Combs saying, quote, "She wasn't the same person he signed. That fame had changed her." But in a podcast in 2022, O'Day revealed that she was fired because, quote, "She wasn't willing to do what was expected of her, not talent-wise, but in other areas." Well, after the raids on Combs' home, O'Day posted, quote, "What you sow, I pray this emboldens all of us victims to finally speak on what we have endured." Well, with that in mind, I am joined by Nadia Shihata. She is one of the New York prosecutors on the R. Kelly case, one of the people who helped put him away. She is now a criminal defense attorney. Nadia, so good to have you on here, Sidebar. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction to the Diddy case, the Diddy raids?
Well, I think it's a significant development in the case. Obviously, he's presumed innocent. No charges have been filed against him. But when you take a step like executing search warrants so publicly at two different locations, it means you have amassed significant evidence. You've got probable cause to believe a crime has been committed, which is the same standard for arrest. So it's significant. Now, obviously, as a federal prosecutor, you want to make sure you have proof beyond a reasonable doubt when you charge a case. So they're continuing to investigate, but it's certainly a significant step.
I am starting to believe. At first, I was saying maybe it's surprising that they didn't have arrests in conjunction with the raid or an indictment in conjunction with the raid. And then I started thinking, well, they obviously had probable cause. Perhaps they were speaking with people, but they needed more evidence on those properties. Perhaps before there was an allegation, maybe before it was destroyed, they want to preserve it. They want to get that evidence. They might be issuing subpoenas to people. I think that now I'm wondering if we may not see potential criminal charges for a while, because it also might have to be submitted to a grand jury too, right? So we shouldn't expect perhaps charges against Diddy maybe for a little bit.
Absolutely. Look, if they're following kind of the playbook we used in R. Kelly and pursuing similar charges as we did in that case, these types of cases, take a little bit of time to investigate and to make sure you're corroborating all the victim testimony you're getting. You want phone records, you want travel records. There's all sorts of corroboration that you're sending out subpoenas for, that you're speaking to people about, and then also conducting searches to help with that.
What did you think of the fact, criticism from Diddy's lawyer, that this was an excessive military-style use of force? What's your take on that?
Look, it did appear that there were some kind of military vehicles used. As prosecutors, you're not kind of calling the shots on how agents operationally conduct a search. My guess is, giving them the benefit of the doubt, that there were allegations that there were firearms in the property. It's a very large property, and Diddy likely had security with firearms, so they have to secure the location and they have to ensure the safety of everyone conducting the search. So, sometimes they err on the side of using as much firepower as possible in those circumstances.
Yeah, especially given the allegations and the lawsuits, which makes me wonder, do you think the lawsuits are what precipitated this? Do you think the people who are accusing Diddy of wrongdoing are the ones who might be cooperating witnesses and what set this ball rolling?
I think it's very possible that the public filing of that first lawsuit came to the attention of federal agents and prosecutors and may have sparked this. And then obviously the follow-on lawsuits, once that first lawsuit was public, have only added to the allegations. And as a prosecutor, you might start with the people who have made allegations publicly in a lawsuit, but I don't think they're going to stop there by any means. That's just the beginning, and then you're investigating, you're talking to more people. Other victims may be coming forward who have not been public at all now that they're seeing that this is a serious investigation. So it's a starting point.
We don't know what they found in the house, and I'm going to ask you about what you think they might be looking for. But for example, if there was an allegation, hey, Diddy has guns all over the place, and then you go to the properties and there are firearms all over the place, that kind of corroborates what they're being told, and that could be useful for prosecutors in trying to establish the case, establishing that what they're being told is real. But what do you think they're looking for specifically if they are moving forward in a sex trafficking investigation?
They're looking for anything that is corroborating information that has been given to them by live witnesses and victims. So, it's been reported they were looking for electronic devices. Sure, they're going to be looking for videos potentially of sexual activity engaged in with complaining victims, but they're also going to be looking for communications, particularly if they are pursuing potential RICO charges. I think they're going to be looking particularly for communications between Diddy and his inner circle, his inner network of people that may have helped or facilitated or enabled him to commit potential criminal activity.
Now, the reason I was so excited to talk to you about this is because you were part of a very infamous prosecution of a very infamous individual. Do you see similarities between the Combs case? Let me rephrase, Combs hasn't been charged, but do you see similarities if we're talking about potential sex trafficking charges? You know what the allegations are right now against Mr. Combs. Do you see similarities between him and R. Kelly?
Look, every case is different, obviously, but there do appear to be some similarities based on the public allegations that have been made. For example, the allegations about forcing individuals to have sex with others for the pleasure of Diddy in this circumstance. There were similar allegations with R. Kelly, and that he recorded that activity. So it's a pretty striking similarity in that sense.
But also the level of influence and power, right? I mean, a big part of it when I'm reading the lawsuits is just, you surround yourself with this team, you have tremendous wealth, access, this lifestyle. It was eerily reminiscent of what we were hearing from Kelly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you reach a certain level of fame and you've got a group of people around you that are literally there to help you with whatever whim you have, legal or illegal, and are getting paid to do so, and are, more than happy to turn a blind eye to whatever else may be going on. That's a very big similarity. Again, these are just allegations at this point against Mr. Combs, but yes.
And he has a big criminal charge. So when his lawyer says there's been no criminal liability, no civil liability, he's exactly right. Those lawsuits are still pending. The lawsuit with Cassie Ventura was settled. Time of this recording, Sean Combs has not been criminally charged in any way. I want to make that clear. But I always thought it was interesting when you think about how the Kelly criminal prosecution began, how it started. It wasn't. Would you say it was from the documentary that was released that kind of got the ball rolling? Because again, you wonder, what is the thing that gets going? With Harvey Weinstein, it was that New York Times article. With R. Kelly, it was a really damaging really damaging documentary. Maybe that was what you could say started the ball rolling here with Combs. Maybe it was these lawsuits. I find it so interesting, the similarities with what begins a criminal investigation.
Yeah, look, in R. Kelly, there's no doubt that the documentary and the public airing of allegations certainly came to the attention of law enforcement, and we began looking into it. But again, in all of these cases, that's just the starting point. To bring a federal criminal prosecution, you really have to amass credible evidence that you can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But the public airing of such information against well-known people, that does get investigations started. There's no doubt about that.
What was it like prosecuting R. Kelly?
You know, we tried to, as best we could, approach it as we would any other important case that we prosecuted. Obviously, there was a lot of media attention to it, and R. Kelly fans, I would say the biggest thing that affected the case was a lot of our victims received a lot of harassment on social media and so forth, and that takes a toll on people and certainly makes them hesitant to want to move forward with a case.
When you were first prosecuting him, did you see a lot of people coming to R. Kelly's defense? Because at this time, I don't know if I'm seeing that so much with Diddy. Actually, what we're seeing is a lot of videos coming out from years ago that are looked at in different contexts. You see high-profile celebrities who are making these comments, these innuendos about him. I don't see a ton of defense for Diddy. When you were first going after Kelly, I mean, was there a ton of, were you yourself receiving any backlash, any threats? Was there a lot of support for him?
It wasn't support from kind of public, well-known figures, but he had a lot of kind of just regular fan support that would post on social media, YouTube channels, send emails, mostly to victims, not to the prosecutors, but we did receive, you know, some of our own kind of threats and such.
It's so disappointing to hear. So if this is a case where Diddy is ultimately arrested, ultimately charged, federal prosecutors, what advice would you give them prosecuting a well-known figure like Diddy?
Seasons change sooner than you think. Switch to all-season tires for better traction and performance. Choose from 17 Toyota recommended tire brands. Count on the right tires at the right price. Show us any competitor's tire price and we'll beat it by 5%.
I would tell them to put their heads down and pursue it as they would any other case. Try to block out all the noise and just build your case step by step, put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And you know, if it's reportedly the Southern District of New York, those are very good prosecutors, and that's what I would expect them to do.
And how do you prove it? What do you have to show in a sex trafficking related case? What do you have to prove to make that conviction?
Yeah, so it depends exactly how they're pursuing this. If they do it through a RICO, which I suspect they're probably looking into, they're going to need to show an enterprise, so an inner circle, a group that helps him facilitate a pattern of criminal activity, and then that pattern can include things like forced labor or sex trafficking. The sex trafficking here could be, you know, transporting people via his private plane or otherwise to commit commercial sex, and commercial sex doesn't necessarily have to mean you know, paying money, but also receiving anything of value. So he's making videos of this activity, that could be a thing of value as well. So, and using force or fraud or coercion to do that. And so abusing victims, putting them in humiliating situations,
Right.
that can all be part of that.
Or promising them money or something of value and then not delivering it. That would classify it as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So, and what would be the challenges that prosecutors would face, legal challenges? How would someone in Diddy's position, or if someone was arrested, you know, someone else in connection with this, how do they defend it? What kind of arguments would you expect from the defense that you would have to fight back on?
Yeah, if they pursue RICO charges, I imagine a defense would be that there was no criminal enterprise, that this, to the extent there was criminal activity, this was one person acting alone. And if it's not RICO, a lot of it would potentially fall outside of the statute of limitations. So the advantage of RICO is it lets you go kind of decades potentially in the past, and also it expands venues, so you can charge criminal activity that occurred not just in the Southern District of New York, but throughout the country. If that's taken away, that would be a big hit to the scope of any criminal indictment.
Last year, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, who you probably know as singer Cassie, accused him of sex trafficking and sexual slavery. She alleged that Diddy raped her and beat her so severely that she was bruised. Cassie also alleged that Diddy made her have sex with prostitutes and recorded it on video. She also says he forced her to carry a gun. Cassie sued him under New York's Adult Survivors Act and settled with Diddy outside of court just one day after the suit was filed. Joy Dickerson-Neal also filed suit against Diddy under the Adult Survivors Act, accusing him of drugging and sexually assaulting her back in 1991, when she was a college student at Syracuse University. Diddy was slammed with yet another lawsuit last month, this time brought on by music producer Rodney Jones, also known as Lil Rod. The 73-page lawsuit lays out dozens of allegations against Diddy, including that he forced Lil Rod to hire prostitutes and have sex with them. The court doc also claims Diddy himself assaulted Lil Rod, but that's not the only bombshell allegations revealed in the detailed documents. Lil Rod doesn't shy away from publicly naming other celebrities he says assaulted him.
I don't know that Cuba Gooding Jr. is going to escape from that one.
Let's start with the allegations against Academy Award-winning actor Cuba Gooding Jr. Lil Rod alleges Diddy was, quote, grooming him to pass him off to his friends. This fear became reality when Mr. Combs introduced Mr. Jones to Cuba Gooding Jr. when they were on Mr. Combs' yacht. There's actually photos of their interaction together too, which are laid out in those court documents. In the first pic, you see Diddy and Cuba talking with Diddy's arms on Cuba's. In the next pic, Cuba has his arm around Lil Rod and is smirking. Court docs go on to state, quote, Cuba Gooding Jr. began touching, groping, and fondling Mr. Jones's legs, his inner thighs near his groin, the small of his back near his buttocks, and his shoulders. He rejected his advances, and Mr. Gooding Jr. did not stop until Mr. Jones forcibly pushed him away.
In the last couple of years, there were allegations against him for sexual assault. So now we have those prior allegations, and now we see him tied to this case as allegedly trying to, assault a little lad, assault others.
Back in 2019, Cuba was booked on misdemeanor charges of forcible touching and sexual abuse after he allegedly groped a woman in Times Square. By the next year, 3 women had come forward, accusing him of non-consensual sexual touching. He eventually reached a deal with prosecutors that required 6 months of counseling but no jail time.
I'm getting the feeling where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Because now we have 2 different instances where you're accused of the same type of behavior, years apart. I think there's something there, and I don't know that Cuba Gooding Jr. is going to escape from that one, because you already saw definitely people moving away from him within Hollywood circles and other circles once those first sexual assault allegations came out. So at this point, I don't think he's going to get away with it a second time.
Is it possible that he could face charges based on these allegations that were brought forward by Lil Rod?
It is possible as well. Again, we've got the statute of limitations issue to deal with, so depending on the time frame of when this happened, is, again, the Adult Survivors Act, which was the vehicle where many of these lawsuits came out, when these civil lawsuits, came out.
Come on, dude,
there
hurry
was
up,
a
dude.
finite amount of time for those suits to be
Let's
filed.
roll, buddy.
And the time frame is going to be very, very important. What witnesses come forward, because again, this may not be a situation where DNA may be at play. This may be more of a situation of, hey, yes, I was there, and I would recall, Cuba Gooding Jr., putting his hands on Lil Rod, or I recall certain aspects. So it's going to be a very witness-intensive type of case, and the question is, will the witnesses be willing to come forward?
Lil Rod's lawsuit also publicly named another celebrity linked to Diddy, Jennifer Lopez.
From the standpoint of the names of the celebrities that were tied to this, the fact that Jennifer Lopez was tied to this back when she was involved in party to a shooting at a nightclub when she was dating Diddy, and is now alleged to have brought the gun with her to the scene and gave it to Diddy, and that's how the shooting occurred.
Lil Rod's team brings up J-Lo when establishing Diddy's history, writing his, quote, Rico enterprise has existed for at least 20 years, dating back to the 1999 nightclub shooting in NYC, when Mr. Combs required his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez to transport his illegal firearm into the NYC nightclub. The court docs allege Diddy forced his then-artist Shine to assume responsibility for the shooting of several individuals. All this happened back on December 27, 1999, when a fight broke out at a nightclub. Diddy, J-Lo, and rapper Shine were all there, and according to former rapper Mark Curry, Diddy paid Shine $1 million to take the fall for the shooting and serve a 10-year prison sentence. Lil Rod's lawsuit now suggests it was J-Lo who brought the gun. The fact that she's named as somebody who was carrying a weapon, could that be incriminating for Jennifer Lopez?
It can be, but with a huge caveat, right? If I'm not mistaken, that shooting did not result in a death. I know that someone was harmed, but I don't believe anyone was killed. Because of that, you have the statute of limitations to deal with, which is basically a prolonged amount of a certain amount of time that a prosecutor has to be able to bring charges against someone. And it varies from state to state, but the one thing is consistent is that there is no statute of limitations on murder. So if P. Diddy had actually killed this person, or the person died as a result of their injuries, now J-Lo could be brought into the mix as a co-defendant because of the fact that the person has passed away. But if the person is alive, and maybe they had serious injuries, whatever the case may be, statute of limitations would run, and it is highly likely at this juncture that statute of limitations have expired, therefore she does not have any criminal liability. But the reputational damage might be a different story, because now she's branding herself as something very different than who she was back then. Back then, she was very much Jenny from the block. She was, dating a variety of hip-hop artists. She was very much in that world. Now she's married to Ben Affleck. She's trying to, portray herself in a different manner. So now her past is going to come back to haunt her, and we don't know what that's going to mean for her future in terms of movie deals, music deals, or anything like that. So I think for her, it might be more reputational damage than criminal liability.
Pearson says it's possible Jennifer Lopez could file some sort of defamation suit, but it's not likely.
She could, but at the end of the day, when it comes to defamation and those types of cases, truth is an absolute defense. So if he has some sort of receipts to basically prove that, hey, I was right there, I saw her the same way in the filings, you saw a number of different screenshots and pictures that he submitted to support the different points that he was making. If he has some pictures to substantiate that she was carrying the gun, it is going to be very hard for her to say in good conscience in a court of law that, this wasn't true, he's made this up, and now as a result, I've lost, money, I've lost opportunities and things like that. There's going to be too much evidence out there connecting her to this that is going to be very hard for a jury to come back and say, yeah, he's making all of this up.
But it's not just artists that Lil Rod named either. He specifically mentioned Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, in his court documents. It reads in part, quote, Mr. Combs was known for throwing the best parties. Affiliation with and or sponsorship of Mr. Combs' sex trafficking parties garnered legitimacy and access to political figures, artists, musicians, and international dignitaries like British Royal Prince Harry. Why even name Prince Harry? There's no allegations against him or anything, but why bring him up?
I think it may have been a move to bring more credibility to the filing and say that, this basically he being Diddy, was using his fame, fortune, and influence to insulate himself. So he was able to legitimize some of the activities he was doing by having these lavish parties, bringing all these A-list celebrities, but somewhere in a back room or somewhere in another wing, horrible things were happening. So the fact that Prince Harry was there does not necessarily mean he was participating in what was happening. And just because you're at a party doesn't mean you know what's happening in every inch of the house. I mean, if you think about it, if the party's being thrown in a mansion, there are various floors and wings. So it is completely possible that he was there and did not participate. Now, you had said Prince Andrew, especially as a result of the allegations that came out in connection with the Epstein case, that they were close and that they traveled together, and there was a person that alleged that he had sexually assaulted her while she was underage. That would be a different story. But Prince Harry and the way that it was mentioned seemed to be very, again, just sort of trying to bring legitimacy and talk about these were the people that Diddy surrounded himself by to protect himself.
So Prince Harry has no formal accusations against him, but the name association could cause damage to his reputation. Even so, Pearson says it's not likely he files any sort of defamation suit.
It's possible that Prince Harry may be able to preserve his reputation. But again, and just in light of everything him and the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, have been through, I really hope that, he's able to completely distance himself, maybe make a statement, because again, since he's not necessarily under the umbrella of the royal family directly, so in other words, Buckingham Palace would not be releasing a statement on his behalf. It would be him releasing a statement and saying, yes, I went to X party, but no, I never engaged in any inappropriate behavior or other details that he may see fit to share. So that's going to be, we're going to have to wait and see on that one. But again, since it was such a minuscule mention in the greater context of this filing, he may be okay.
Pearson compares Prince Harry's association with that of President Bill Clinton, who'd been seen with Jeffrey Epstein before his arrest.
And there didn't seem to be much said around him actually engaging in activities, more that he was present at the parties. So I don't recall seeing a lot of fallout on the part of President Clinton from that association.
Speaking of Epstein, Lil Rod's court docs draw a parallel between Diddy's alleged crimes and Jeffrey Epstein's. Epstein died by suicide back in 2019 when he faced numerous charges of sexual assault over the course of multiple years. His longtime companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, was charged and found guilty of sex trafficking in relation to her time with Epstein. She's currently serving out a lengthy prison sentence. Lil Rod compares Diddy's chief of staff, Christina Cahoron, to Ghislaine Maxwell, saying she ordered sex workers and prostitutes for Mr. Combs and ordered and distributed ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and mushrooms to Mr. Combs under celebrity guests.
Yo, I'll be back. I gotta get coffee.